The world was broken. The ground had drunk the blood of Abel, and the curse of Cain had driven humanity into the wilderness. Adam and Eve, the first parents, had buried a son murdered by his own brother. They had watched their firstborn wander east of Eden, marked by God yet banished from his presence. The garden was a memory. The serpent's wound festered, and for the parents of all living, there was a season of silence. But God was not finished with the first family. While Cain built his city of Enoch and multiplied the violence that would define his line. While the descendants of the murderer forged bronze and iron and boasted of 77-fold vengeance, something else was stirring in the tents of Adam. Eve conceived again, and when she held her third son in her arms, she named him Seth. She said, "God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him." The name itself was a declaration. Seth means appointed, granted, substituted. He was not an accident. He was a replacement. The line that Cain had severed with a stone would be reconnected by divine appointment. The shepherd who had died in the field would have an heir. The blood that cried from the ground would be answered by new life. This was not merely a birth. It was a resurrection. The godly line, which had seemed to end in blood and dust, would rise again in the person of this child. Seth was born into grief, but he carried the promise that death would not have the final word. The story of redemption, which would eventually fill the scriptures, began here with a mother naming her son in defiance of despair. Seth grew. Unlike his brother Cain, who had walked in the fields of his father and learned the ways of the soil only to stain them with blood, Seth learned the older ways. He learned the stories of Eden, of the garden where God walked in the cool of the day, of the fellowship that existed before the serpent and the fall. He learned that there had been a time when humanity knew God face to face, and he carried in his heart the ache for that time to return. And in his days, something remarkable happened. People began to call upon the name of the Lord. The scripture does not say this began in the days of Cain, though his descendants had built cities and developed technology and created art. It does not say this began in the days of Abel, though the shepherd had offered acceptable sacrifice. It says that in the days of Seth, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. This was the distinction of the godly line. Cain's descendants produced the warriors and the weapons. They produced the culture and the civilization. They produced the glory of human achievement. But Seth's descendants produced the worshippers. They produced those who remembered that human hands were made for prayer as much as for labor, that human voices were made for praise as much as for speech. They produced the line that would not forget God. The contrast could not be sharper. While Lamech, Cain's descendant, was boasting of murder and vengeance, Seth's line was learning to call upon the name. While the city of Enoch was rising in architectural splendor built on blood, the tents of Seth were filling with the sound of prayer. Two humanities were developing side by side, and the difference between them was not technological or cultural. It was spiritual. Seth lived for 912 years. In our modern imagination, such longevity is fantastical, but in the ancient world, it spoke of something profound. These were the days when the world was young, when the effects of the fall had not yet fully corrupted the human frame, when those who were closer to the original creation still carried something of its vitality. But more importantly, these long lives meant that generations overlapped in ways we cannot imagine. Seth was alive when his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson Noah was born. He could have held in his arms the child who would build the ark, who would survive the flood, who would restart the world. The connection between Eden and the new world was not broken. It was preserved in the person of Seth, who bridged the gap between the first parents and the last righteous man. This is the significance of genealogies in Scripture. They are not mere lists of names. They are chains of memory, lifelines of truth passed from hand to hand across centuries. Seth was the link. He was the one who could say, "I heard the stories from my father Adam, who heard the voice of God in the garden." And he was the one who could say, "I have seen the child who will carry those stories through the waters of judgment." The godly line was not an abstraction. It was a family. It was a grandfather holding his descendant, whispering the promises across the impossible distance of time. But we must not imagine that Seth lived in ease. He was born into a world where violence was multiplying. He was born into a world where his own brother was a murderer, wandering the earth with a curse and a mark. He was born into a world where the glory of human achievement was inseparable from the rot of human corruption. The city of Enoch was not far away. The sound of bronze being forged was not distant. The temptation to despair, to surrender, to build his own city and forget the name of the Lord was always present. Yet Seth chose differently. He chose the way of Abel rather than the way of Cain. He chose the altar over the city, the prayer over the boast, the presence of God over the protection of walls. And in that choice, he established a pattern that would define his descendants. Enoch was born to Seth, and in Enoch's days, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. The pattern continued, the line continued, the worship continued, while the world around them descended into the corruption that would require the flood. While the sons of God and the daughters of men produced the Nephilim and the earth filled with violence, there remained a people who called upon the name. This is the mystery of godliness in an ungodly age. It does not require the majority. It does not require the culture. It does not require the city or the bronze or the iron. It requires only those who will remember, who will call, who will refuse to let the knowledge of God perish from the earth. The genealogy of Seth is a litany of hope. Enoch, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. Each name represents a life, a choice, a continuation of the line that called upon the Lord. Each generation faced the same choice that Seth faced. Each generation could have been the last. Each generation could have turned to the way of Cain, to the city, to the violence, to the forgetting. But they did not. For 6 generations, from Seth to Enoch, the line held. And then something extraordinary happened with the 7th from Adam. Enoch walked with God. The scripture does not say merely that he called upon the name of the Lord. It says that he walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. The godly line, which had been preserved through blood and birth, now produced a man who transcended death itself. The line that had begun with a replacement for the murdered Abel now produced a man who did not die. This was the fruit of Seth's choice. This was the harvest of calling upon the name. The godly line was not merely about survival. It was about transformation. It was about intimacy with the divine that could break the very power of death. Enoch was the proof that Seth's way was not the weaker way. It was the way of power, the way of life, the way that led to God. And Enoch's son was Methuselah, whose name means when he dies, it shall be sent. The prophecy was clear. The flood was coming. The judgment was prepared. But the line of Seth would survive it. The ark would be built. The seed of the woman, promised in Eden, would be preserved through the waters. We know almost nothing of Seth's personal life beyond these facts. We do not know his wife's name. We do not know his trials or his triumphs, his sorrows or his joys. The scripture gives us only what we need to know, that he was appointed, that he called upon the name, that he lived, that he died, that his line continued. But this is enough. In fact, this is the point. The godly line is not about individual glory. It is not about personal achievement. It is about faithfulness across time. About the willingness to be a link in a chain that stretches from Eden to eternity. Seth did not need to be famous. He needed to be faithful. He did not need to build a city. He needed to build a family that would remember God. And in this, he succeeded more than any city builder could dream. The city of Enoch is dust. The bronze and iron of Cain's descendants were washed away in the flood. But the line of Seth produced Noah, and Noah produced Shem, and Shem produced the line that would produce Abraham, and Isaac, and Jacob, and Judah, and David, and eventually the one who would be called the Son of God. Seth was the 3rd son of Adam and Eve. He was the least likely to matter. He was born after the tragedy, after the murder, after the curse. He was the replacement child, the substitute, the appointed one. And he became the ancestor of the Messiah. This is how God works. He does not require the firstborn. He does not require the strong. He does not require the city builder or the warrior or the king. He requires those who will call upon his name, who will walk with him, who will be faithful when no one is watching. He requires those who will be the line, the link, the lifeline of truth in a world that has forgotten. Look at your own life. You may feel like Seth. You may feel like the 3rd choice, the afterthought, the replacement for what was lost. You may feel that you were born into a world already broken, a family already divided, a story already tragic. You may look at the Cains around you, with their cities and their achievements and their boasting, and feel that your way is the weaker way, the forgotten way, the way that does not matter. But the story of Seth says otherwise. The story of Seth says that the godly line is preserved not by strength but by faithfulness. It says that calling upon the name of the Lord is more powerful than forging bronze. It says that walking with God is more lasting than building cities. It says that the third son, the appointed one, the replacement, can become the ancestor of everything that matters. You are not too late. You are not too small. You are not too broken. The ground has drunk blood, but it can also receive seed. The curse has been spoken, but the mark of protection is still available. The beast is crouching, but the door is not yet closed. You can be the Seth of your generation. You can be the one who calls upon the name when no one else is calling. You can be the link that preserves the line. The world does not need more cities of Enoch. It does not need more bronze or iron or boasting of vengeance. It needs those who will remember Eden. It needs those who will walk with God. It needs those who will be faithful across the impossible distance, who will hold the child who will build the ark. Who will whisper the promises across the centuries. This is the calling of Seth. This is the calling of the godly line. This is the calling that reaches from the morning of the world to the evening of your own life, asking whether you will be the one who calls upon the name, whether you will be the link that does not break, whether you will be the appointed one for such a time as this. Subscribe now to walk through more ancient stories that explain our modern world. Hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter of humanity's hidden history. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that the third choice can become the first purpose, that the appointed one can become the ancestor of everything that matters, that the godly line still needs links. Comment below with the word appointed if you commit to being the Seth of your generation, the one who calls upon the name when no one else is calling. This is not just content. This is calling. This is purpose. This is the story that can save your lineage. Join us in the comments, in the community, in the continuing journey through the texts that built civilization. The next story is waiting. Are you? The line of Cain is gone, washed away in the waters of judgment, remembered only as a warning. The line of Seth continues, through Noah, through Abraham, through David, through the one who walked with God more intimately than even Enoch. The third son outlasted the first. The appointed one appointed the future. The one who called upon the name made possible the name above all names. Choose the line that lasts. Choose the way that walks. Choose to be appointed.